Hello and welcome to How to Build Your Repertoire final edition. I'm Grandmaster Denes Boros, and we are going to once again try to blast on through, show you what you're supposed to do or how to build up your repertoire, just as the title would indicate. Now, this is the final edition Q&A. So if you have any questions about building or how to come up with a conclusion that, okay, I want an opening that is more positional, you can ask away. Do give me some pointers in that case because I do not know you or I might not know you. And these information can help me guide you in the right direction, and I might be able to help you decide what to do or what choice to make. So let's continue on with the tournament. Join up. Now you see me play a lot, but in fact playing a lot is good for your chess and also for building a repertoire, meaning opening variations. The more you practice, the better you get at it. So in this specific case, I feel the easiest way to grow as a player and to develop my lines is to practice it. All right. So we've been practicing e4 to knight c3, except if d5 when I take on d5. Knight c3, d4. Kind of surprised to see c5, but nevertheless, this is an interesting way of playing with white. Queen d2. Okay, bishop d3. Vesmantias, thank you for subscribing with Twitch Prime. a3. So first off, I'm gonna get rid of that bishop because it is a big hassle if it's all around. Note that once you get these Sicilian type of structures, you want to over-defend the e4 pawn. It's paramount, so to say. The second most paramount thing is to go ahead and castle as quickly as possible. Note that my opponent is actually setting up some trickies with bishop c5, knight g4. Question is if I have queen g5, which looks a little bit iffy, so I don't think I'm going to go that way. However, I'm going to go b4, asking where this bishop is going, and with the same time also developing my bishop d4. But that is a little bit, I think, inaccurate, because I have knight f3 hitting that bishop and developing. Now, the best moves are those when you can develop your piece and attack. Here, this bishop is under attack. Note that my next move could be castles, and after that I will be ready to have some action in the center. Now note, black is in full control. There's two defending, only one attacking e5, so can't really push just yet. However, once I put my people into safety, mostly the king, then I will be ready to get all those rooks in the center and just start pushing in the middle. And that's kind of the first and easy steps that you should follow. Get the center, check. Castle your king, check. And then you can go on and continue with your plans. So I'm castling. I've already got some central control. And after that, you're going for the middle. Castles. Now this bishop is rather annoying. So I'm going to take that and then get my bishop on this diagonal where it will be unopposed. Bishop b2. Notice that it's very useful for me to have two defenders, as it's not enough for for black to break through. Knight e5, tricky, but is it tricky enough? Knight a4, hitting the queen, which is sort of running out of space. It can't really go there. Knight c4, interesting. If I take, then take, so that's not a good deal. So gotta go here. Rook e1. And then this knight is suddenly a bit trapped, because it can't go to e4. That's protected by my bishop and rook. b5. It's a good move. There. Okay, knight b2. Just taking away the c4 square. So chess is partly about anticipation. You want to anticipate what your opponent is about to do. Okay. I'll take here and just trap this knight. So I was anticipating my opponent wants knight c4. So I got all of my guys over here to trap this knight and also get my pieces ready to hop over c4 if this knight ever plans to go there. Knight c4. Voila, prediction wasn't completely off, and now I win the pawn. Because that b5 knight c4 was very creative by my opponent. Now it's only a pawn, but a pawn goes a long way in chess. Hello, hello people. Let's take. Now rook endgames can be very tricky. However, if you can get a rook behind your pawns, that's the moment you can be sure that things will go well for you. Rook c8. Okay, I'm just gonna make life easy for me. There, okay. h4, creating a luft so there's no back ranker. Now notice that my pawns are all defended. Next I will play rook e3 just so these guys are defended all. And set up some problems for that king on g8. Occasionally I can go h5, h6 just to make sure it can't move around too much. Let's go rook c7, get the rook on the 7th. That's where the rook belongs. So in fact, black is doing quite well with this move with rook d2. Sort of putting some pressure on my position as well. Now if I would manage to get the second rook on the 7th, that would break havoc. Not that rook g3 isn't an option. Okay, let's just take c4, and now I start pushing my pawns. Notice the rook belongs behind the pawn. There, I do not care for that pawn. What I care is this pawn. c5. b5, and these marching tanks are very tough to stop. b6 takes. I have this rook on this side and then just march down the a pawn. Rook b3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And my pawn is just too fast. There, b7, and a7 is unstoppable, and queen is incoming. Thank you for the follow. full basket. And there's no stopping of the lady. So that's what you do. You build the position that you're getting. You build up the center, you castle, and then you decide what to do. Now I'm going to queen again. Road to GM, thank you for the host. So that's how you do it. You keep to your plans because that helps you drill the idea in and the memory of what you're supposed to do. So I'm going to go for c5 e6, the con variation as you might have seen in the previous episodes. And a6. And the whole point will be to play against that e4 pawn. By the way, just telling you guys, if you have any questions, feel free to ask away. I'm here to answer your questions. Now the bishop is usually strong when there's already a softened structure, but not in this specific case. In this specific case, I have a sturdy center, and this bishop just cannot crack through because it's just too solid, just too solid. It is just too solid. You can't really sacrifice there. I have too many defenders. Bishop e3. Queen b6, the typical idea of pressing over that bishop and knight. No, then knight c6 is incoming, and that could be even more powerful. Now, once you push f3, that e3 bishop becomes extremely loose. So I have this very nice little move of e5. It does open up, so it's risky. But in this specific case, I can take on e3 and win the piece. Note that the queen that was lurking on b6 is doing some fine job. So that's why f3 moves are often very dangerous, because that sort of creates weaknesses everywhere in black's position. Knight takes g7, let's go king f8, hit this knight, which can be a little annoying, although it's not that bad. Note that this pawn is defended, and the white queen can't really enter, which would be a problem oftentimes. Knight f5. I want to get rid of this knight because that's probably the strongest piece in the position. If that's gone, it'll lead to a fantastic position for black. Note f takes, I can just take back and I'm up a piece. Knight d6. Knight d6. Okay. Let's get this rook in the game. And even though white is having a little bit of an attack, there's too many pieces still in the corner. Thank you for the follow. Oh. And here white is sort of struggling. I already have my rook on a nice file. The only thing I have to deal with is my own pieces on b8 and a8. I want to get them out as quickly as I can, but it kind of will take me some time to get there. Rook takes g2. Even though these guys are quite close to my king, it can only be decisive if there's a rook or queen around. But it's just a million miles away. Trust me on that. The queen on d1 and the rook on h1, they're just too far away to do any sort of damage. There, knight takes b7. And again, chess is not checkers. I'm considering trying to mate this king somehow in this position. Good check, king f1 though. If I go bishop c1, bishop c1, bishop d2 is good enough, because once this knight takes, my queen will get that beautiful square on f2, and the king has nowhere to run. So that's why whenever you're playing white, you've got to be careful with these f3 moves. It creates lots of weaknesses on this diagonal, and that's what I used in this game. e5, I created a battery, actually won a piece, and after that I went for a quick attack with a mini combination at the end, which won after queen f2. Hello there, people. Hello, Saragon, Benchstone, Sepper. Bishop g1. Bishop g1 looks interesting, but I felt that bishop d2 is the cleanest. Hey, it won a queen. That's not a bad news. d4. Remember what we used to play, and it's the King's Indian. Bishop g7. It's castle. f3. And we go a6. So in the King's Indian, you give away the center. You will go for counterattacks though. In this specific case, I will be going for c5, b5 breaks, which is typical of the Banco, but it kind of fits the criteria here as well. Knight f2, queen a5, pressing on these pieces. Note that in the long term, I want to use the power of this g7 bishop. Apron Chess, thank you for subscribing with Twitch Prime on a 6-month subscribes for 6 months and a 3-month streak. Welcome back. Hope you're having a good time and happy to see you back in our humble little family. I'm thinking about taking because this bishop is not ideally placed on d4. Although maybe I could just go for b5. Anytime d5 happens, my bishop opens up. And I can take on d4 whenever and whatever time I want to. So one of those things that people just don't tell you when you're starting out, pressure is your side of the game. You want to keep pressure as much as possible. Why is pressure so good for you? Well, if I take bishop takes d4, then my opponent does not have to calculate any small little details and changes in the position. If I keep it on the board, it's still a possibility, and my opponent will always have to keep it in mind that, hey, that is a possibility. If that's good, that could be a problem. Tweety, thank you for following. So these are those little details that you should know. Tension is good. Oftentimes when beginners play chess, they're like exchanging pieces. But in fact, that's not that good, because it clarifies sometimes because of a wrong reason. b5. Also, there are some chess mechanics that work. And one of those chess mechanics is put your rook on a file which will soon to become open. That's why rook b8 is such a nice little move, and that's why it's so popular among grandmasters. Okay, b3. Here comes the big question. If b4, I don't like that, but I like b takes c4. Want to open it up for my rook. Bishop takes c4. Let's go knight b6. Although I'm not a fan. I'm gonna take here first now, because I think it's the right time, and then I'll have knight e5. Hitting on this bishop, I might reroute my knight on c6 soon enough. Rook b4, a3. I can still just take. I'm very much ready to kick out this bishop. Maybe it's a bit early though. Bishop e3. Bishop e3. Do I have knight g4? And I have some bishop c3 ideas. I think that's ideal. Knight g4. The point is, you can take my knight, but then my bishop will break havoc, not only winning that knight, let's defend it, but it will also probably win an exchange. Now, I heard somebody asking about knight d5. Knight d5 now it doesn't work, but it's not a big deal to face knight d5 in general. You can always just drop back to d8 and defend the e7 square. It can be scary, but it's not as powerful as it looks at first sight. Hey, Drod. So I don't really have like a grand repertoire suggestion. Soragan, what we are using right now is the King's Indian and the Khan variation. But it really depends on what are your strengths and weaknesses. So this is kind of like a template that you can use and take a look at. Also, if you missed the earlier parts of this session of how to build a repertoire, take a look at the ones we did earlier on YouTube. Queen c1, and I don't know, this is sort of a dilemma to take now or not to take. I think I'm gonna go knight d4 first. Wait, knight d4 could be dicey because of some checks. So let's eliminate that knight first. There, if I go knight d4, I can take on a1 anytime, so that's why I'm not rushing that. So I'm gonna go knight d4, hitting on e2. So I have a double threat. Never rush, never rush. That's kind of rule number one. Rushing ain't good. Bishop d1. Okay, rook b1 is a possibility, I guess. Sort of getting a little bit tricky, but I think I can just take and go e5. I don't want to go knight d6 because then my opponent would start lurking around my king. So I'm rather giving up a pawn and be up an exchange than going the other direction. Bozy, thank you for following. I know that this queen is sort of in a tight spot on a1. Not the ideal square in general. So again, I made sure I castled. So if nothing goes your way in chess or in the opening phase, make sure you put your king into safety. That will give you some good chances later on. Okay, queen b2. Trying to be aggressive. Okay. I see what my opponent wants. All right, let's go f6. Just kind of replacing this missing bishop. I'm putting pawns there instead. So making sure that there is no entrance. Now, I have a good center, more space, but that's not always enough. So let's go queen c3, pressing on that bishop, defending the knight. And if bishop h6, I always have rook f7, so I'm not really scared of that. So mostly this is fairly ideal, but you do have to be careful once your bishop on g7 is gone in the King's Indian, in the Perk, or the Modern, or the Dragon. In all of those cases, you've got to be very vigilant that you don't run into some terrible, terrible attack. But the good thing is that this bishop on d1 is just extremely passive. It doesn't really have too much scope. h4. Okay, not entirely surprised. Let's defend the rook. h5. Okay, I think I have g5 sort of trapping this bishop. Yep, that bishop is trapped. You can't really take because I kind of predicted all these things happening. So if any sacrifices, this rook on f7 will be guarded by this b7 rook. Awesome, thank you for the follow. King h2. So now it is time to invade. Let's go a5, then get the rook on the file. It's still tricky. My king is a little iffy. However, in the long run, this should be a big, hefty advantage for black. Matt Corbin, thank you for the follow. King there. Let's get this rook on the file. Sometimes you make little moves. You make sure that you own the file. You make sure your pieces are defended. Notice that apart from my lady on d3, which I'm pretty sure is safe, all of my guys are defended. It's one of those critical things that you have to look out for. Rook c1, setting up rook takes d1. Also have a pseudo threat on this rook on f1. Notice bishop g5 does work, but then again I would take on d1 and that's game over. And just to talk a little bit about knights on d4. Now knights, bishops, all of the pieces love to be in the center. However, the knight is the happiest there because it has a long range of pieces and placements it can control. Note that there's never any queen f5 because the knight on d4 would take it. And that's why you want to have a knight in the center, especially protected by this pawn on e5, which makes sure there's nothing that can endanger it. Bishop takes g5, but now rook d1. fg would have been tragic because my rook has already moved away from defending. And that's kind of all these little mechanics in chess. You've got to be vigilant of what you're doing. You've got to remember that, oh, I moved my rook. So I've got to do something else and find a different plan. Because in this specific case, my rook would have been in danger. But rook d1, thankfully, was in due time. Yeah, and by the way, if you guys have any questions on how to build a repertoire, how to kind of look at openings, do let me know. I'll be happy to give you an answer. It's actually even best if you have like a dilemma sort of situation, because from two alternatives, it's much easier for me to give you an idea of what you should be doing. Now, mind you, I might not know you, so it will be sort of a guess, but if I know you're a tactical player, I can give you an advice. If you're a positional player, I can also give you an advice. What is a good tournament and reliable opening, like an opening for a must win? Now, for that, by the way, the King's Indian is pretty good. There, bishop e3, f3. And by the way, this is that situation when it's nice to have this structure. This bishop on b7 is not that happy. There, knight g3. And to answer your question, I would go with the King's Indian. The King's Indian is quite a choice if you're going for a win. Knight e2, just over defending that square. So SLW is saying it's easy to mess up with the other line. That line, I think you're referring to the bayonet. I've got to, I think, reorganize my guys. Yeah, I definitely do. Because I couldn't move my bishop. Knight f3, bishop e2, go castling. b5. I think I'm going to go b3, stopping my opponent from actually marching on the board, pressing there. And then I want to castle and play on the side where I have the majority. Knight b6. Okay, bishop. Wait, can I go? Okay, bishop e2. Bishop a6, but this time with this bishop already kind of trying to get in the game, I'm more than happy to close it off. AB. That bishop is not very well placed. Bishop d2, guarding this guy, and I'm getting ready to castle. There, let's castle. Now this knight on g3 is not ideal, I don't think. So I think I will be planning to maneuver it either to e3 or g4, where it can go to this juicy little spot. Okay, knight h1. Knight f2, and for g4, f5. I mean, I have multiple plans. Do have to mind this idea. That is very important. Queen c7. Okay, let's go knight g4. That's an idea, just to soften the king, or just maneuver it to e3 and play f5. What to play against the Fianchetto? I think in general you should follow games of Kasparov and try to go for knight d7 e5, rook a8, trying to go for the endgame. I don't think I mind. I don't think I mind. Okay. Let's start rolling with this pawn. Softening the king, and might push it up to h6 just to create some mating threats. Queen a7. Okay. Do I want that queen to enter? Not a big fan, but I'm not really scared. I'm just gonna take away all those entry squares. how to calculate enclosed positions. Calculating enclosed positions is exactly the same thing as calculating in open ones. You still have to deal with all these nitty-gritty variations even if the position is closed. Okay. Let's give this check. So we're kind of coming in. We're going in. We're going in, folks. And Queen E1. Defending and sort of winking at this idea of getting the queen to G7. Maybe even F5 will be on the cards just to activate those bishops. King is running. The king is running. Okay, F5. The king is attempting to make a run for it. Can I take? No, I can't. Take. Let's take here. So I'm trying to infiltrate. If I can infiltrate, mate is abound. In fact, I think it's more than abound because this bishop is just not well placed enough. Queen h8 is checkmate, and if you go back, I go queen h6 and checkmate over here. Knight e7. Tricky, but not tricky enough because check, take, and it's checkmate. Check, and it's checkmate. So this can get very dangerous. These attacks are super dangerous if you're not careful. Now, if you guys look for King's Indian studies, it's on our YouTube. So do check that one out. We have studies on legends and ways of playing the King's Indian, which is a very sharp and interesting opening. May not be the best, but it does give you ample chances to win the game. Knight c3, and as I remember, we're going to go for this good old Grand Prix. Now knight f6, I don't think that was a great idea by my opponent. I got extra space, and that matters a lot. Bishop b5, always pin. Pin is always good. I could take knight e5 or take. I think I should take here and go knight takes c5 because this will lead to terrible structure with me having a big lead in development. I'm already kind of bombarding my opponent with some threats. Go ahead, castle. And again, notice, there's like 50,000 pieces on the other side of the board. So if I could attack in due time, mate will be not so far off. Bishop e7, queen g3, eyeing that g7 pawn. Also sort of preparing knight g5, which will put pressure on f7. g6. Okay. Let's go knight g5. Having lots of pressure there. Yes, so I am playing all these openings during this tournament. And if you want more, definitely check out all those links that I was mentioning. Knight h6. There. Okay, I'm going in. I am going in. I don't mind getting this position sharp. I am going to win this knight at the end. Knight f5, but in that case, I will have knight g4 and the juicy spot on f6. Kind of similar to what I did previously. Isn't the Dutch pretty sharp? Yeah, definitely the Dutch is a decent choice if you're looking for something aggressive. Now in opposite side castling, it makes sense to open up the position in front of your opponent's king. So I'm going to go b4, a3, undermine the situation on this side. Yes, I am getting rid of my opponent's doubled pawns, however, at the expense of this king getting exposed. c4, let's get this bishop in the game. Note that this controls some important squares. There, let's get knight e5 going. Not only attacking that bishop, but making sure there is no e5 break, keeping that bishop passive. There, queen b6, let's hide the king. So there's not a bad opening, just a badly played one, really. Queen b6. Can I take on c4? I think I can, and I will go d3. If queen b4, I have that little move which defends all. Because note, if queen b4 happens, that is a problem. The knight is. I can't move it because this b2 will get it, so shouldn't do it. In this case, d3 is nice because it defends the knight. The queen can't really take because it's worth a heck lot more than the knight does. Knight d6, but this runs into this sneaky little move of bishop a3, which ambushes the lady, and if the lady moves, then the d6 pony is going to be endangered. So yeah, coming back, I don't think that there's really a bad opening, just a badly played one. Not that you can't have bad experiences. Obviously, some fit our style and some don't. On the other hand, just to, be objective, it's time for a little bit of a rover. If I rover c5, that's okay, because I can win it. Well, in general, the Dutch has the benefit of you getting winning chances. If you play like a slower game, like, I don't know, Queen's Gambit accepted, the chance of you winning is not that high. But if you play the Dutch, for example, the chance of you winning the game is much, much higher. So that's kind of the give and take of building a repertoire. You play the Queen's Gambit accepted, you might get a solid position, but who knows if you can actually, win the game. If you play the Dutch, you might get a worse position, that's definitely true. However, you might win the game. Again, I'm going to go for c5, e6 and play the King's Indian otherwise. a6. And again, as shown before in earlier editions of how to build your repertoire, this will be our main target. Now h5 is a silly little move in many other cases, not here, mind you, because this pawn can and will become a target here. Let's Go bishop c5, bothering that knight. So there's two targets here, the e4 pawn and this knight on d4. Queen b6, eyeing that knight, and the eternal weakness on f2. Knight c6. I didn't want to go e5 because knight f5 felt like a bit too tricky. Knight f6. So I'm pressing over these squares. Knight b6. Okay, so I think I'm a little bit behind in development. Could go back though. I think I can still drop back. I was thinking about knight g4, but then I would lose total control over the dark squares, and that's one of those things you do not really have the luxury to do so. There, knight g4. I'm trying to build a wall in front of this bishop. If that happens, I will be quite happy. Now h5 is a risky way of playing. It's not necessarily the one you want to emulate, but if you like aggressive chess, it could be on your radar. I think there's nothing wrong with that. Bishop g5. And this does look ugly, but I will get that bishop. So I think I call this one a deal. There, I'm gonna take that, because that's the reason I played f6. Otherwise, I wouldn't have dreamt of that. Now that bishop is dead. Just dead, dead. d6. Now my bishop can get out of there in due time, so I'm not really worried about that one. g6, not giving you a free pawn. No thank you. And if you think about it, I've got the better structure. So many weak pawns, doubled ones, stacked ones. These pawns without an f2 defender. And I've got the bishop there as well. So this is a dream scenario. Hey Lolly. Knight c4. Okay, so I want to develop my bishop. Note that this knight doesn't really have any chance to maneuver itself to d5. There. And I think it is time to attack. This king is sort of soft. So if I manage to get all my guys over there, it's gonna be game over. I was thinking about knight b4, cb, bishop c4, but there's this astounding move of rook c1. Counter-attacking me, and I didn't want any part of that thing. Also notice my king is relatively safe in the middle because of this pawn chains. Okay, let's take on h4. Takes. Okay. If I go here, takes, still rook c1. Not a fan. If I give a check, well, I mean, I don't really mind or care for that pawn, for that matter. There. Knight b4, takes. Not quite worth it. That's just castle. Bishop h5 check would have put my pieces in danger. Didn't want that. King b8. Takes. Okay, bishop takes. And this king is a little soft. I do necessarily and definitely need to open it up. Okay, I could go knight b4, takes. Take there. Or just queen d7 immediately. Queen d7 immediately looks good, setting up this idea of queen h3. Is it common to refrain from castling? Now, the reason I can get away with not castling so long is because I have bunch of pawns in the middle. If you have no pawns in the middle, forget about it. It's not possible. There's specific lines where it does work, and that is the rouser and the e6 Sicilians. In both cases, you have so many pawns in the middle, oftentimes it's doubled if you're playing the rouser, that it's very difficult for your opponent to break through. Can I take rook g8? Let's take here first. Okay, bishop e6. Let's keep all our guys ready to pounce. This knight is going to regret jumping around too much. And our rook g8, bishop h3 is deadly. Okay, I'll take that knight. Queen f2. Nope, I would just go queen g4. But as I can see, my opponent just resigned. So those are the two lines, the rouser and the e6 Sicilians. You get to be in the middle of the day. SLW saying, I feel like more often than not, I'm not castling in the con. Thought it was maybe too careless, but it now seems that's normal. Yeah, it's kind of okay because of that big pawn shelter. Also, something that I wanted to add, just so you guys know, we are going to have good old opening theory and also game analysis for subscribers this Saturday. So if you're interested, make sure you post on our Discord, and I will see you there on Saturday. But back to this game, going back to this e6 way of playing. Now, the whole point of this setup is to play against this pawn, but that's not the only thing. I want to play d5. Now, bishop c4 is not that good, as I think already mentioned before. This bishop just doesn't put enough pressure on the e6. It's just not good enough. Also, you won't get mate on f7. Knight c6, not falling for this trick. Bishop e2, bishop b7, saying hello to that lady on f3. Mishra, thank you for following. Now, early e5s are not that good in e4 systems. Why? Because they become targets. It doesn't really have a support. Even if you follow Sun Tzu's Art of War, you should remember that you always need to have a supply of your forces. Queen g3 is actually a great move. Planning and preparing that idea. Okay, I can't take. That is not a possibility. Could go here, but first off, I want to activate my knight. I see f4 is coming soon enough, but I don't know. I'm quite happy to get these very nice squares for my knights. Knight f3, very suspicious. Very, very suspicious. Let's take on f3. gf, and now these pawns are stacked. And that actually makes me feel pretty good. Okay. Could go here. Knight f5. Okay, let's just develop first. Let's develop and look around. Mega Blaziken, thank you for subscribing for 3 months. Welcome back. Look at White's powerful bishops, right? Look at them. They're not too powerful. They're quite sad. Those are the saddest bishops I've ever seen. Okay, let's get the knight over here, bothering the e5 pawn and also setting up tricky knight b4 moves. And that c2 pawn is in grave danger. What is the King's Indian? I mean the kid. It is the King's Indian, actually. Said it before I could write it down, but it is definitely the King's Indian. Castles. Okay. I don't have to take it. I can just go bishop e7 and just revert my attention to these very isolated pawns. a3. Okay. I don't have to go there just yet. Actually, I was still gonna hit on that lady first. I didn't take because I didn't want to activate my opponent's pieces. And that's actually one of those little details that they don't teach you yet again, is that when you win some pawn's pieces, oftentimes you're helping your opponent's development. Queen h3, knight c6. Knight e4. Okay, it's time to gobble. You want to win some pawns and pieces. Is that checkmate saying, thank you for the instructional play? You're welcome. I'm glad you're enjoying it. And now you can see those happy knights bouncing around. Now this is annoying, so I'm just going to close it off and defend my e5 knight. Also, my queen is no longer in danger, which is one of those reasons you get sad. And I don't want to get sad. I'm going to take on h4. It's defended by my bishop. Making sure all and everything is under control. Queen g3. Okay. I go g5. First off, let's just go back. I'm up a pawn. g5 can wait. I want to, by the way, open it up in front of that king. That would definitely be a good idea. g5. Still not certain, so let's just castle first. Well, castling does look a little dangerous. I think I can do it though, because I will be able to close off the other side of the board. There, g5. I'm playing on this side of the board, and if these rooks get their deserved open file, it's gonna be a win. de. g4 is menacing. Sometimes I could even go knight d4 and press in the center. Knight g3. Yep. g4 takes, knight d4. Okay, g4. I'm going to activate all of my folks. And this is actually very nasty once these guys get over there. Okay, gf, get that rook over there. Just making sure I have pressure there. Takes f5. And now h4 is unstoppable. I have full control over that square. And once h4 comes in, this queen is nearly trapped. There, h4. Start the lurk session. Takes rook g4. If rook h3, which is the only move. Rook g4, and now rook takes g2 is winning the queen. Note that I can even put extra pressure. The bishop can never take me because this king is pinned. Yeah, if I get the chance, I'll be definitely happy to play the King's Indian and show you it in this tourney. There. Okay. Actually, I don't even have to rush just yet. E4, just bringing the queen in. I can anytime take on G2, so there's no reason for me to take immediately. Rook there. Or maybe there was? No, not really. I can take here, take this rook, and I'm still up a piece with the attack still raging, which is exactly what I want. There, bishop f6, no, queen e5. Let's activate the lady, set up queen d4s. It is definitely what I want. Go c4, bishop c5, activate my guy over there, or just check and take on e4. I'm gonna take, so this king will get exposed to sunlight. And after e3, I am climbing in. Castling early is not necessarily a big problem, Rotvik. There, e3. Check. Let's hide the king. It's defended. I'm gonna go and walk up to e5. Actually, I can just go this way, which is even better. Note if rook d1, in that case I had bishop h4, king f7, it's defended, and I have multiple checkmates going on with queen d2 and rook h1. It is definitely situational whether your king gets into attack if you castle early. It depends definitely on the situation. All right, yeah, because if queen here, I can just checkmate here. Okay, so it's time to go e4. Knight c3, again, memory hook, knight c3 on second move, except for the Scandinavian. d6, f4, we're going for the Grand Prix sort of play. Bishop b5, bothering that knight, knight f3, g6, castles, d3, and we will be going for this big old attack and typical one. f5, sometimes even knight g5 will be on the cards apart from this typical plan. And the reason this is kind of a good adage to your repertoire, because it's easy, simple play. It can help you grow as a player if you decide to play this opening. Okay, I can go f6. Could take, knight g5, takes. One. All right, I want to try this one. Actually, that's not good. It's unfortunately not good because there's a check. I am stopping my opponent from castling, but that So I wanted knight g5, but unfortunately bishop d4 check is just in due time. This was a little bit rash on my part. This is called the Grand Prix. Queen b6, which is sort of annoying. I'm going to go a4, defend that bishop, and I'm kind of noticing your tendencies. Me opponent, I know where you want a castle. I know where you want a castle. I can tell. I can tell. So even though I gave up a pawn, I forced my opponent to castle on the wrong side, so to say. Knight d2, getting this knight towards the pawn, hitting these guys. King h1. And maybe I will have a5 ideas as well. So I have a double, maybe even a triple threat going on in this position. Can I go a5? I don't think so. Not really. Should I take? Or I could go bishop g5, press in both directions. Let's go bishop g5, and you can see that my bishops are working full time. That's what bishops are supposed to do. Rook e8. Okay. Knight c4 takes knight b5, and I will be undermining this pawn. Not to talk about the fact that I might be able to target that a7 guy pretty soon. Bishop takes, knight b5, hitting the lady, the a7 pawn. So it is kind of logical that my opponent will take, but then my rook will get very, very, very strong on a7. Or at least it will have lots of pressure there. Would I prefer this to the closed Sicilian? And I'd say yes. I definitely say you should prefer this one to the closed Sicilian. Not that the closed Sicilian is necessarily bad. b6. Okay, so let's kick this bishop away. Back. And I think I have this very nice sacrifice of knight d6, rook a7, and my pieces are just swarming on in. Note this has to be accepted, otherwise I take that rook. And the king just doesn't have anybody on the queen side, this box. Most of the fellows are on the king side chilling. Rook takes a7. We're coming on in. But queen a4. And there's not many chaps around the king. Knight here, but that drops this bishop. And I'm still having some threats in that king because it's kind of drafty, not to talk about the fact that sometimes even bishop f4 can be decisive. Rook there, okay. Let's go rook f7. Rook f8. Okay, bishop b7, knight e7, rook a1. If you take, it's checkmate. If you go back, it's mate. Bishop b7. So I'm kind of trying to lure that knight away. Rook a1, king goes here. Check, check. King there, check. takes, bishop b7. Here, oh no. Takes, knight c there. Queen d3. Okay, bishop d6 doesn't do much. Yeah, rook a1. Queen e4, bishop d6, check. Now I have check, check, and rook a8 is a mate. Yep. Yeppers, checkmate. Nice. So talking about the repertoire of Carlsen, Carlsen plays everything. It also always depends on the situation. Now, us mere mortals don't have that opportunity to do that. However, you can learn from it. You can learn from it and decide that, hey, I am able to make decisions and drill in some of these lines. Now, for example, as you can see, I am drilling in this line of the con and this other opening. Can I go d4? Let's go d4. If takes, I take. Sometimes you do have these funny solutions. gf. Now, this is one of those stacked situations which isn't often loved, but in fact is not that bad. Okay, let's go bishop d6. Note that most of my folks are sort of lurking around the king. Okay, I'll take that pawn and I'll go knight d7 pretty soon. Queen c7, knight d7, and obviously either I'm gonna keep my king in the middle or castle long. Hey Vamsh. What opening would I pick as an award? Probably the Neudorf does deserve an award. Also, I kind of didn't play bishop e3, but hey, time is of essence. Bishop e3 now. It's kind of nasty. There, let's take that. Knight c5, knight e4 is going to be a big problem. Knight e4 check. King g2. And this runs into knight g3. I'm pretty sure this works. Just have too many guys around the king for that not to work. Takes, queen g3. There, takes, check, there, check, king e3. Okay, first off, let's get another guy in the game. Can't be too bad. There, okay. Let's take it, takes, and it's checkmate. What's my opinion on the Reti King's Indian attack? It is definitely a decent opening. Not that there's nothing better than the King's Indian attack. Knight c3, and we're going to go forward with this bishop c4 line. Bishop c4. And this has a bit of a tendency of a King's Gambit. You want to open the F file for your guys. d3. d6, f4, and that's the whole point. you are going for knight f3s, trying to get your rook on the f file and press on f7. So in this specific theme and this specific stream, I am focusing on certain openings. So we are not trying to stray that. Obviously, everything else will come back to normal afterwards. However, this time I want to pinpoint how you can build your repertoire with knight c3s, the c4 knight c3 systems, King's Indian, and con variation. Can I explain why I chose the Grand Prix over the closed Sicilian? I think it's fairly simple. I wanted to get positions where I have attacking chances. In the closed Sicilian, most of the time than not, you don't really get those. Bishop d7, let's castle. And actually, this is a dream scenario. Both the rook, both the bishop is ready to pounce on that weakness. There, okay, I can go f5 or take. I think I am going to, I could take there. Okay, so I'm gonna take, go bishop g5, and because of that nasty pin, my attack is very close to breaking through. I'm just needing my queen to join the party. Bishop c6, trying to check me over there. No thank you. No thank you. Queen d6. Okay. Let's take. Queen h5. And we're coming on in. Not only hitting on f7, setting up queen h6, and this good old rook maneuvers. And they're coming on in hard. It's kind of difficult to deal with. King g7. Interesting choice. I'm gonna go rook f3. Just going with my plan. Actually, I don't really care about the queen side anymore. What I care for is checkmating. There, trying to run, but actually it runs straight to queen f7. That was a bit too much. Rook f5 and rook h5 is checkmate. So oftentimes you can win the queen, but there's nothing as decisive as checkmating. There, and rook h5 is mate. Perfect. So summarizing this repertoire that I was giving, it's actually just a sample. You can build your own, obviously. So this one's kind of going for a dynamic play where you have many fighting chances, and that is the con variation that you might have seen earlier on. The King's Indian, where you do get some chances against your opponent king. You might get a little worse. I'm not saying you won't, but you will get a chance to win. There's always a difference between choosing openings. You can play very solidly, and you can do that. But in each and every case, I would definitely advise you to make sure that you drill them. d4, here we go again. g6, bishop g7, castles. And my opponent's playing the good old stonewall with white. However, with this pawn on d6, it's not as great. Okay, let's take, go knight c6, pressing in the center. Knight b4, lurking, bishop a6, want to go knight d3. There, I could wait around a bit. Let's go rook c8 first, pressing there. Now I'll go knight d3. And actually I won time because my opponent wasted a move with a3. There, but this runs into bishop c2, and sadly there's no f3 square for the queen, and that means this knight on b3 is doomed. There, let's take that knight, let's take that pawn. There, queen takes d6, and when you get the advantage, one of those important things is not to lose momentum. Momentum is key in the game of chess. Once you seize it, you never really want to let it go. Okay, let's go rook d8. Notice those bishops are doing some heavy lifting. Knight e5. Okay, queen c5 check. Okay, let's go here. Queen f2. We're lurking around the king, as we should. Chess ain't easy. Don't get me wrong, it ain't easy at all. Queen d4, just making sure all of these squares are taken away. Chess is partly about restricting your opponent's pieces, and that's what I'm doing right here. Making sure my opponent doesn't really have any moves at all. Let's go bishop d3, trying to get rid of that rook. Knight d3, queen d3. Again, there's no escape squares. Bishop d4 is incoming. After bishop f2, the rook will run out of spaces to go to. And if the rook moves away from the first rank, queen f1 is checkmate. Bishop e3. Let's take. There, and that's almost checkmate. Not quite yet, unfortunately. Let's go queen g2. I hoped that I could get it in due time. Unfortunately, I can't. But hey, a win is a win. Let's go rook c2. You're getting in there. And then mate is abound. There, queen e7, queen g2, mates. Yay! And we won as well. So I'm going to give you guys a quick rundown before we end. Also, if you enjoyed it, definitely check us out on Discord. Well, not all of them were easy, mind you. Some were tougher. Ninja Monkers, thank you for the follow. I am going to give you guys a quick rundown of what we learned and what you should be looking for. So here it is. Let me create a study. New study. What we learned. Start. Building a repertoire. So one of those things that you've got to remember that you should play lines that you enjoy. Very important. So e4, c5, knight c3, f4. And a good thing about playing this line, it gives you ample attacking chances, or good, depends on how you look at it. Gives good attacking chances compared to g3, which is not a bad move. So g3 is a solid line. But doesn't give you real attacking chances. It's mostly positional. It leads mostly to positional play. So that's why I would try this one, knight f3 here. And if you are liking direct attack, you can go bishop c4, castle, and f5. Or if you like creating weaknesses, you can go bishop b5, d6. In this case, you can even take castles, knight f6. And you have this simple plan of d3, queen e1, and queen h4. The idea of exchanging off that defender and going for mating attacks. The other chapter is the black side. Actually, let me go back. Against e5, we kind of do the similar thing. Bishop c4, bishop c5, d3, d6, f4, knight f3. And once you get rid of that bishop, you will be able to castle or go rook f1. But all in all, the goal is to target that f7 pawn. And if you succeed, then you win the game. Shocker, shocker. With the black side, let's flip the board. We looked at this line. This one, a6. Bishop b7. c3, queen c7. Here you have quite a few things that you can do. You can go h5 and try to go for some attacks, or go for d6, bishop e7, castles. The only thing you have to tend for is that e5 square, which is very important. If that is covered, usually black gets good counterplay. Leads to dynamic play for both sides. And if d4, I definitely advise you to go for the King's Indian. d6, castles here, e5. And you can go knight c6, d5, knight e7. If you like heavy theory and attacks, go knight e8 and f5. Let me give you some sample lines here. Knight e8, f5. And you will start roaming with your pawns down the board. Or you can go and play knight a6, which usually leads to more of these solid type of positions with a bit more maneuvering. The bayonet attack leading to sharp play, and this one leading to more positional struggles. So that is kind of it for this lecture. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. And now we are going to pass on the torch. And I really hope you guys enjoyed your stay here. Don't forget, tomorrow we are going to look at subs games. Send in your games, game analysis. You can check these out in the future on our YouTube channel, also on our socials. So I really hope you guys had fun on this topic, and looking forward to any ideas, questions you have in general about openings, about your games. Always interested to hear about that. So with that, I am out and hope you guys had a beautiful, beautiful day or night, wherever you are. Bye bye, guys. Take care.